Our next feature is Connie Post. Connie Post served as the first Poet Laureate of Livermore, California. Her work has appeared in many journals, including Calyx, the Comstock Review, Styx, the American Journal of Poetry, Spoon River Poetry Review, and Verse Daily. Her awards include the Crab Creek Review Award, Liakoura Award, the Caesura Award, and some new ones which she'll tell us about. She has 3 full-length collections and 3 chapbooks. Connie's 2 2023 collections include Between Twilight by New York Quarterly Books and Broken Metronome from Glass Lyre Press. Please welcome Connie Post.
Thank you, Sandy, for that beautiful introduction, and thanks for keeping this program going. It's amazing, all the work that you do. And thanks for all of you for coming. I'm going to read from both of my books. It's been a bit of a challenging year having 2 books, but in a good way. So I didn't really plan it that way, but that's the way it worked out. So my 3rd full-length book is called Between Twilight, and it's from New York Quarterly Books, and I'm really thrilled with it. And I'm going to read off that one first. Many of you that know me on Facebook know that I had 2 emergency eye surgeries for detached retina in June, and my eyesight isn't back by a long shot. So I'll be wearing my glasses, but even so, sometimes I have what I call a little blur out. So if I have a brief little pause, you'll just know I'm just trying to catch my vision. Okay, and a little bit of some of the poems I'll tell you when are about childhood trauma. So just to warn a warning. One of the first poems, the second poem in the book is called What to Say in Between Twilight. Why speak of sorrow when it slips out of the mouths of the broken birds clutching to the telephone lines? Why speak of regret when the black feral cat runs into the hedges upon your turn into the drive? Why speak of rage when the car skids on the slick ice in the opposite direction of your intentions? Why tell anyone about the secret paralysis that seizes you during sleep? Why speak to the rabid moon when the crickets are muted and starving on the dark? This next one's a little bit about, just like a little bit of a thing about writing and all the, how important it is to us. Ink. She took her pen into the forest and wrote long sentences into the trees until there were no more trees and they succumbed to the weight of description. Soon after, she went to the river and dropped paragraphs into the water, and the rapids carried her stories downstream. She remained alone, with only the pen and earth, now dry and barren as the self who carried her here. I kind of write best when I'm kind of exiled and alone. So some of the next 2 or 3 will be about childhood trauma. And I kept a diary in 8th grade that was full of a lot of things. And so this is a poem about that. When I was in 8th grade, I kept a list of everyone I hated at school in my diary. Occasionally, if someone was nice to me, I'd cross off their name. In winter, I discovered that my mother went through my diary. She told me I've never seen a child with so much hate. And she shook her head and walked away. At home, I often beat up my older sisters. I hid in my bunk bed and I cut the eyes out of my dolls. She has such a bad temper, they would say in other rooms. I didn't understand it either. My father loved me so much, he couldn't leave me alone. So much that I was sequestered in the slanted rooms where all the doors disappeared. Sometimes when I kicked holes in the walls, my father would patch them up for me. I merely had to hand him the spackle and he would smooth it all away. I can no longer find those old diaries. I have no lists, just a box in the garage with some loose blank pages and a doll I never named. I'm going to read a poem about, there's some poems in the book about our bodies, which, as most of us know, become increasingly complicated the older we get. You know, the doctors always start the sentence with "at your age." It's always prefaced by that. But I have a couple, at least 2 or 3 autoimmune diseases. So this one's called autoimmune. One part of the body turns against the other, reacts as if an enemy has invaded. The war against friendly fire goes on for years, possibly decades. One doctor after another gives pills in doses unrecognizable to your broken mouth. Late at night, you read one medical article after another, trying to understand why the armed forces attacked a sovereign place in the body. You toss and turn, the siege goes on. You sleep, you love, you banish yourself to your own bed. You watch yourself line up words inside your mind, a small army encroaching from afar. I got a little bit discombobulated in my reading, so I'm going to be flipping around a little bit, but this one's called The Lie. The Lie. When I was in second grade, I told a girl on the playground that I lived in the hills surrounding our town. I told her I lived with the wild animals and I slept under a tree each night. For decades, I never understood why I told that lie. For decades, I forgot her name. Now, when I think about my father and his shadowy exits and entrances into my room, I think I was trying to tell her about claws and teeth and the sound of growling that comes from behind a tree. I was trying to tell her that I understood the sound of brush rustling in the distance and how a small girl figures out how to hide in abandoned caves, learns how to stay still so not a creature can hear you breathe. These days, I scatter blessings and dry leaves amongst the mourning wolves. And mourning is mourning. This one, yeah, I'll read a couple, two or three more from this. I'm not going to read that one. A lot of the ways that our body, things that happen to our bodies when we're young, at least for me in my early 20s and 30s, you kind of find a way to disown the body. It kind of feels like it's separate from you. And the part of the healing is to like take it back. So this one's called Citadel. This is not your body. It does not belong to you. It is not the one that left the sallow rooms of home circa 1980, never to return. This is not the body who entered the hallway of a college dormitory and knew not a soul, who carried English books like a soldier carries ammunition. This is not the body that left the same college town, pregnant with a son, with a man you knew who would someday leave. This is not the body who gave birth and bid farewell to a womb who carried two babies. This is not the body who falls into anesthesia and counts stitches like shame. This is not the body you return to each murky dusk. This is the body you were told to smite. This is the body you hid inside. This is the body you cradled. This is the body that knows the sound of a belt removed before a beating. This is the body that knows how to leave like a song rising from nothing, like music leaving a cathedral. Thank you. I think I'll read just two more from this manuscript. So when I went to AWP last year, it was in Washington, in Seattle. It was right near, well, not about an hour from where my dad grew up, and his very not good beginnings, which became multi-generational abuse. That's how it happens. But I thought about that river. It was a beautiful name called the Chehalis River. So I'll read that poem. River Call. You took your boat out on the Chehalis River and caught sturgeon with your brother who was dying of pancreatic cancer. I think of you, Father, holding up the prehistoric looking fish, your hand in its mouth with that half smile, half sneer. After twilight, you took us inside the cabin, put aside your cores, cut the meat from the bone and sawed through the coarse skin. You spoke to me through gritted teeth. You told me that soon the waters would be too heavily fished and there would be too few sturgeon. You told me your own father used to take you fishing before 5 a.m. after a beating the night before. For years after you climbed out of our bunk beds, you left at dawn with a car full of whiskey and drove to the dark lake near our home, searching for your ancient self as if the fish were still hiding from you in that deep, sandy bottom. Lots of years of therapy. Thank you. Then I'm going to end with a poem about some sort more to the end of the book, or kind of a little bit more redemptive. But my daughter, my grandson, I was talking about him, he's 9 now, but this is the story of kind of how I found out about Jake. And I wrote this poem when my daughter was 26, which is almost like 10 years ago. So I aged myself. To my 26-year-old daughter, you are sitting in front of me 2 days before my hysterectomy, telling me you are having a baby in July, asking questions only the moon can answer. The wooden grain in the kitchen table runs in the same direction as the conversation. We sort through 1,000 ifs as the kitchen light flickers. I move a half-empty glass away from surgery instructions that tell me no food past 9, only a sip of water, no jewelry, no aspirin. I am telling myself I will be fine. All surgeons know how to remove items from the body, tumors, blockages, hidden prophecies. I am bidding farewell to a knotted house of cells, ramshackle after years of being empty. But it was your first home, your first warm universe void of Saturn and satellites, where you held out your intricate hand and stepped into your first dance with gravity. You making your own constellations, you forming, emerging as celestial bodies do, quietly changing the galaxy as if to say, I'm here. So I'll end with that one. And then I'm going to go to Broken Metronome. And Sandy mentioned I had a couple of really, oh, look, I did the back. Whoops, there's the front. My sister did the front. This book, just last week, had a really good week. It was named as a distinguished favorite in the New York City Big Book Awards. And then like 4 days later, I found out that it won the American Fiction Award for Poetry Chapbook. So I'm very glad because this book is very important to me. It tells the book about my brother who died just a year and a half ago. He was 59, of a really terrible journey with Parkinson's. And so I'm glad I'm getting to tell his story. And Parkinson's is a disease that's getting more and more prominent, unfortunately. So here's some poems. And his name was Cliff. Searching. Scientists search for a cause. All I can do is comb the literature like a student cramming for exams, trying to map the way back to your first symptom. How can we know what decisions a body will make for us? How can we know how long a mutation will keep a secret? How can we know where your mind is when you no longer speak? All I can do is hold the memory of your hand in mine when we first went to Sunday school and believed in everything. Coming in the front door. Your caretaker tells me a woman in your group home died yesterday. I didn't know her, but I passed by the room and her empty bed. Her keening permeated every corner of the house. I enter your room knowing you're losing your appetite. Parkinson's is a thief, I say to myself. The new hospice nurse asks me, remind me, how old is your brother? We struggle with medication schedules and what to change. Less suffering, less suffering. That's all we seem to say these days. But only the dimming light seems to know the answer. I help you sort through 1,000 hallucinations as I walk inside those long corridors with you. The truth hides in the small cracks of twilight. So unfortunately for my brother, his really manifested tremendously in dementia, which was really hard to be with, to watch and help him with. He had this thing called orthostatic hypotension. When he stood up, his blood pressure dropped. Orthostatic hypotension. When you sit or stand up, your blood pressure plummets, but every day you fight to get up. You don't care what the nurses say, I have to get out of here. You repeat over and over, and then pull off the bed sheets and start to rise. I try all my stay in bed tricks I used when my children were young, but there is no story or fairy tale I can read to you that will ease this cerebral storm. You continue the fight until I say you'll get out of here eventually, and then immediately I feel guilty for the lie. How many ways can someone fall off the ledge of themselves? Now that you're finally asleep, I stand here in the doorway watching for signs of impending rock slides, keeping an eye out for the first loose pebble. There's this, towards the end, you learn all these terms that are obviously very clinical, and they don't really describe what's happening. And I learned this term called Cheyne-Stokes breathing. With any of you have been with the dying or help with that, it's a labored kind of breathing. So this is this poem, Respiration Explained. The hospice nurse gives it a name, Cheyne-Stokes breathing, an abnormal breathing pattern where the patient has fast, shallow breaths and then deep, heavy ones. She explains it's the body's way of trying to correct itself when everything is shutting down. For days, we watch you fall in and out of the cadence of endings. The nurse says it's not painful, but it's hard for me to believe as I watch you fall in and out of the broken metronome of this fatal disease. I say your name quietly several times an hour, and although you don't respond, I remind myself that the literature says they can hear you even when they are unconscious. I remind you of all the times we collected daddy long-legged spiders, how at times you held them in your hand, each one pushing up against an unknown surface, as we all do. Okay, I just have, I think, one more. There was the one I wanted to read about chess, which is really important to me, so I hope I can find it. I have 1 minute, so maybe I'm not going to make it. All right, so I won't read that one, but I will read the last one in the book, called Robin Redbreast. True story, of course. Robin Redbreast. All through your illness, I wake to the sound of birds. I ignore them. I don't care about the type, kind, species, or if they are far or near. I just get dressed and drive to see you. 2 months after you die, a redbreast robin makes a nest in the hanging plant just outside my bedroom window. I watch her carefully. I go to the window countless times a day and make sure everything is okay. I worry at night about the eggs and if they will still be there in the morning. I read grief books. I watch mindfulness videos. Nothing helps. It's a Sunday in June. I watch her until noon. She stares ahead, doing her silent work. I see now how someone comes back to you, oftentimes in a small shelter just beyond your reach. Thank you so much. I'm going to put in the chat, because I didn't do this at the beginning, I meant to. Here's how you could reach me. So if you want a signed copy with most recent award seals, you can email me at the top. Or you can go to my website, and then you can either get Broken Metronome from Glass Lyre or Between Twilight from New York Quarterly Books, or just email me. And I'll sign, you get a signed copy, and I'm giving like a better deal. So you can get either of those for 10 or 15 bucks. Thank you, Sandy. Thanks everybody for attending and listening. I appreciate it.